Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 196. And in this episode, if you hit the I key, you can open your inventory. You'll find some strange items. Maybe they'll help you move your way forward, maybe they're red herrings. But either way, you're going to have to figure something out if we're going to get to the end of this episode. Because we're talking about puzzles in games, and in particular, design frustrations and sort of the design wins as well, where we enjoy the application of puzzling aspects in our gameplay experience.
This is a sort of follow-up to our conversation about platforming games and how design can be done well and done poorly and how it looks in those different camps and where it comes down to skill versus design. I mean, Geoff and I have been a very loud advocate for puzzle games on this podcast, and I feel like every year I'm learning what a puzzle game is because to me, I have a very solid idea from when I was a kid of what a puzzle could be. But then in our previous episode, when we talked to Dave about how Missile Command Delta is basically a puzzle game, it's a card-based missile shooting game, which is basically solving little puzzles every time you do a match. Just like, oh yeah, I guess that is a puzzle. And I guess card games are puzzles. And I guess some combat games where you can't die are puzzles. And then you start to worry, like a few years ago when we thought everything was cake. Now I'm starting to worry, is everything a puzzle? Are all things puzzle?
What's a puzzle? That's the puzzle.
Yeah, exactly.
To call something a puzzle is absolutely one of those. It could mean one specific thing or it could mean anything. A jigsaw puzzle is absolutely, here are a bunch of pieces, they fit together a certain way, do that. Honestly, I just remembered this now. I grew up using a Macintosh, so my gaming was limited. There was a baked-in game to System 7 of Mac OS that was a jigsaw puzzle. It was a map of the world, and you could choose easy, medium, or hard, and that was just how many pieces it broke that same exact picture into, and you could put them in their place. You get a little do-do-do-do, and that was it. So, puzzle game. That was literally a jigsaw puzzle. But the definition where it comes down to like a brain teaser or something to be solved or a mess to be cleaned up, a picture to be made, these are probably more classic versions of what we think of when we think of a puzzle. But nowadays, a lot of game design and a lot of possibilities allow for, like you said, Matt, like Missile Command Delta is kind of a mashup on things. Tetris is a puzzle game, but you can have Tetris-like aspects in other games. It doesn't necessarily have to be as siloed. And so this also means that puzzles can spring up on you out of nowhere in any gameplay experience.
Yeah, and I think talking about pure puzzle games like your Portals, where the whole game is designed to be a puzzle to solve, and there are the moment-to-moment puzzles plus the puzzle of the entire narrative and solving it, and it being such a short, tight experience, which is what I think makes Portals special still to this day.
Agreed.
But then you have games like Zelda that are known for puzzles. We think about the Sokoban puzzles, the block-pushing puzzles, which are some of the more, for better or worse, famous puzzles within the Zelda franchise. It's safe to say now they feel a little rote sometimes. They can still be fun, and I won't deny that they can be fun because they can. But I definitely don't think I'd be excited to find another block-pushing puzzle in a puzzle game. And it's pretty common in a lot of RPGs to have some kind of block-pushing puzzle. And I guess it's just, when it works on a simple level, especially with the top-down Zelda, you can really communicate the space very easily. It's easy to fall back into that trap because it's a formula that works, and so you want to keep using it. I feel like now they're kind of everywhere, whereas when the early Zelda games were coming out, they were fairly still new as far as a game mechanic.
I've learned a lot about how many Sokoban games there are and how many of those kinds of puzzles there are from watching Jeremy Parish's YouTube series on all of the different game systems of the 80s as he works his way through them. But it makes a lot of sense because if you want to hinder your player, you put an obstacle in their way. That could be light a torch, which is a very Legend of Zelda. It could be destroy something. It could be put something in place. And if you've already made building blocks, quite literally and figuratively in some cases, well, you don't have to create a new asset, and it can seem as though it's already part of the background. If you go into a room and there's something that you've never seen before, you're going to screw around with it. But in the original Legend of Zelda for the NES, the blocks you would push to unlock the stairwell, open the door, whatever it is the same sprite as all of the other ones. So you don't have to add anything new in terms of graphics or utilize any more space or storage to make it happen. And it also makes it feel like a cool secret. There are those times where the original Legend of Zelda, you could bomb some of the walls, but there was no indication. Whereas by the time we got to Link to the Past, there would either be cracks in the wall or you could sort of stab your sword at it and you would get a different sound. We get more indicators as we get more space and allowances for them. So it makes sense that there's a lot of block pushing. I mean, think of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. It is mostly pushing blocks.
Yeah.
There again, we have created 3D polygons. Well, created these cubes. Well, you can jump on them. You can do that thing where you kind of jump and grab onto it and pull yourself up. Man, look at me traversing these. And then I'm going to push them, get into position, shove that along. It uses up time, which feels like it's giving you a challenge. Sometimes it genuinely is. But this is one of those thoughts or through lines that I guess make a lot of sense why you would go towards it. Maybe it is a challenge occasionally or like a real, I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's something that you can solve. And there is satisfaction in solving it. So long as you don't fill the entire experience with them and then you're just like, geez, another one of these kind of idea.
Right, sure. But I think when games focus on it, like I've not played the Pushmo series, but I've heard lots of great things about it. I actually have it downloaded on my 3DS because I do want to play it. Like that is all about block pushing and block style puzzles. And that's the whole point of that game, which I think is a different feel than inserting a puzzle into a game that's meant to be solved kind of quickly and move on.
Absolutely.
You mentioned bombing walls. I'm inclined to think, of course, about the Metroid series. I have, for those not following me on the internet, decided to play the 2D timeline of the Metroid series, which basically means I'm playing the best versions of every game via the remakes or whatever, because I am not playing the original Metroid 1 and 2 because those games are bad. They are important games, but they, for me, are bad games. They are not fun.
There's better ways now.
Right. But takes me back to a moment we talked about in our SideQuest episode with Alex about Dread. Early in that game, so often in Metroid games, a lot of the puzzle solving is finding hidden walls. There aren't many puzzles beyond that. They sometimes involve some other mechanics you may have to solve puzzles in those games, but often the exploration is kind of the puzzle. But there is a wall that you have to destroy early on in Metroid Dread that there is literally no signifier for at all. You would have to just get stuck and randomly shoot walls. And I consider that a poorly designed puzzle. I understand why they would do that, and there are plenty of Metroid games that have walls like that you can't tell that they are where you're supposed to go next, but often those are optional in a lot of the other 2D Metroids, especially having replayed a lot of them. Like, if you miss something, it's not like you can't figure out where to go next. It's more an extra missile tank or an extra energy tank or whatever. But what a lot of the 2D Metroid games do communicate well is like there are divots in the wall. Well, why is that wall completely flat except for that one little divot? What if I go in there in ball form? Will there be something? Oh, look, there is. I can blow a hole in the wall and go across the room, and then there's a thing, and then I get the thing. And so I remember being really frustrated in Dread, a game that I really love, actually, and is close to a favorite next to Fusion. But that one moment early on, I was like, I just don't understand this. Where do I go? Looked it up. And I have no issue with looking stuff up. I am the first in a puzzle game. If I'm stuck for more than 10 minutes, I'm like, I'm just going to look it up so I can keep going. Because to me, it's not just the one puzzle. It's finishing the game and seeing how far I can get also. And I don't consider it a failure, for me at least. But I felt like that was a failure, having to look up that one wall. Typically, I don't know that I would consider it a flat-out failure. I feel like it's a failure as a fan of the franchise and as someone who's played a lot of these games and know that they signpost that stuff pretty well. We've done a whole episode about signposting, and I think puzzle solving is a tightrope to walk, right? You don't want it so obvious that it's easy to solve, but you don't want it so obtuse that you can't solve it. I think of the more cinematic exploration games, although Metroid can be cinematic, but I think of stuff like Mist and Riven or Limbo or Inside, which I haven't played, or Cocoon, also an incredible exploration-based puzzle game. Those games are often mentioned in conversations like this because they ride that line so finely between challenge and understanding. And they, I think, for the most part, a lot of those games mentioned do it really well because you want to stump the player, but not in a way that they feel lost, in a way that they're like energized to then solve it, right? Well, I'm stuck. Let's figure this out.
Right. And it also has to do with how core is it to the gameplay loop, as well as what sort of setbacks are you looking at? Where playing through a puzzle game, something like Pushmo, doesn't feel quite so onerous if it's a challenge or if it's the same puzzle over and over again. That's the point of the game. If a game is a platformer that then occasionally makes you do a puzzle, or is an exploration game that occasionally goes, all right, now solve this Sudoku, it's going to feel very frustrating
Yeah.
when those things obstruct you. But if the entire idea of it is, you're here to solve this. I'm now playing my way through the Box Boy series.
Yes, another great one.
I'm really enjoying it. I didn't get to play it in the heyday on the 3DS, and now I am. The notion of how do I shape what I'm doing? What techniques do I figure out? It is all puzzle. That's fine. I can take my time with it. I try not to look up any of the solutions because they have that kind of, let me walk away and come back. I'm just going to try something new or see if something else pops up for me. And that satisfaction of making it work is fantastic. And it's also a little bit of a platformer, so there are times where it's, all right, I've got to time this just right. Or something like Myst or Riven, those don't have like timed combat. You're clicking on a thing, you are sort of point and clicking on this stuff. If you want to sit there and spend all the time in the world figuring out where these marbles go, trying to identify the sound of this animal, trying to work out whatever picture you're trying to make, it's part of the design. You are engaging with the expected experience, which also means you don't feel like as much of a dummy. All of us, no matter what genre, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a puzzle. We have those times when we play games where we just kind of go, I should be better than this. I should know this. I should have overcome this already. Why is this stopping me? If you are playing a game that is meant to be a puzzler, meant to be challenging, and you are stumped on it, well, yeah, it's frustrating. We all also want to feel like we're exceptional and so smart. But if you're not being so smart, you get a couple of ones where you're like, oh man, I am amazing. I am the best. You should hire me for every smart guy thing you ever need in the world. Then you get to the next puzzle and you're like, I have never been smart about anything in the world, et cetera, et cetera. I am so dumb. That's an expected puzzle experience. You're going to have your ups and downs. And like you were saying, Matt, sometimes it's the really tricky ones. In a Metroidvania, you can put something that is not crucial to progress behind a very weird puzzle or in a very weird spot. In the other big part of the Metroidvanias, Castlevania. In the Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I can think of at least 2 secret doors that have puzzles to them. One of them is in the very first area of the game. You sort of break the wall in the entryway that has the meat in it. That's where it always is since the original Castlevania, but because it's a bigger game, you can go past it. If you walk through it in all of the animal forms, including as yourself, it opens a secret door and it makes no sound when it opens the door. But it just leads to a sword that increases the chance that enemies will drop something you can sell and make some money. That's it. There is a puzzle in the clock tower. There are 4 gears, if I'm not mistaken, and when you hit them, they make a big, like, heavy kind of clunk sound to them. And if you just keep hitting them, eventually they will make this very nice little click sound. And then if you hit them again, you get the big chunk sound again. Also, the clock tower is a very busy area. There are enemies that are flying around coming at you from several angles that do not obey objects in front of them. So you have to do all kinds of things to survive, to get past them, to fight them. And maybe you'll hit one of those wheels. And maybe it makes the big sound. And maybe you're just having fun interacting with the environment. And you're like, does it do this every time? Oh, what's that? And if you keep doing that, that also opens a secret door. It's got just a couple of items. Maybe they're not good enough for you anymore. Maybe there's something cool. But they're not crucial for making your way through the game, but it does make you feel very cool when you get it right. And there's plenty of games that can go pretty deep on that, but it does have to become a balancing act, like you were saying, of what's at stake, what is expected of you, and how much time are we expected to work on this before we feel like something is broken down.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good puzzle design is something that rewards curiosity. I think something we can add to this list of types of topics like this, exploration, broadly, there are frustrating stage designs, and it ties into the platforming a little bit, I think, which we did talk about, but like puzzle games reward curiosity, and like the most base version of this is Tetris, right? A game that you and I love and lots of people love where, well, what happens if I press this button? Oh, the tile moves, this piece moves. What happens if I press it again? It moves again. Oh, I can fit these shapes together. And then I think about something like Tetris Effect, which I only played for the first time a few years ago. And like it combines music and visuals with this gameplay. Some of the puzzles are already like structured in a way that you have to fit pieces in. You can take a simple concept and then complicate it to make it better. I think of stuff like Dr. Mario, Yoshi, and Wario Woods. All of these spins on that, Puyo Puyo, Dr. Robotnik's Bean Machine, the Match 2 and Match 3 evolution of these style puzzle games. They take that simple concept and change it in a different way. I think of columns and all of that as well. And none of these puzzle games are, I think, hard in the sense that I would think they're tough to solve, like you need to take notes, but they are tough to solve in they are beatable. It's seeing the playing field and seeing the results and being able to get to that point. It's a different kind of satisfaction on a base level, I think, that is important to solving those puzzles that can lead us to these other kinds of puzzles we're talking about, because that's the other thing that I think is important to be paired with rewarding curiosity. The rewards have to come fast enough and be satisfying enough that you want to keep going. One long, unending puzzle would be unpleasant for, I think, most people involved, though I'm sure it does exist, because you need that dopamine hit to keep you going, right? You need that little reward for solving the thing to then go solve the next thing. And I think the better games chain that together well in a way that makes it constantly interactive.
Well, it's kind of funny that Tetris and Puyo Pop and Columns and all of those are arcade-style puzzle games.
Yeah.
There is no overcoming it, necessarily. There are versions that are, but at its base, I think of Tetris on the Game Boy, but there's so many others. You don't beat it.
No.
Not the Type A gameplay. Classic Tetris, as it is thought of, is do your best. You are still solving the idea, and it has its own increasing of pressure. It is a score attack kind of puzzle, which has its own, how well am I going to do at this? It's not getting Frogger across the highway. It is not how many aliens can you shoot down. It is not any of those. It is just fit these blocks, match these colors. How long can you keep this up for?
Yeah.
Which does have its own satisfaction, but it is one of increasing tension. You take these notions, these ideas, fill the space, make the line, match the colors. You take it out of those arcade roots and you put them into all sorts of other games, platform games, exploration games, point and click games, wherever else, and we recognize the shorthand for them. When we know that we are entering into a gameplay experience that involves puzzles, we are preparing ourselves for it. Riddles versus brain teasers versus jokes versus puns and things like that. If you know that I'm asking you something, it's a riddle that's going to have a ridiculous kind of like you've got to think outside the box. You're going to come at it thinking outside the box, not just what's the answer to this? Oh, you asshole kind of thing about it. If you are going into Missile Command Delta, Blueprints, into The Witness, into any LucasArts point and click game from my childhood, whatever, those carry with them the idea that I'm going to have to pay attention. I'm going to have to take note of what's in my inventory. I'm going to have to click everywhere, or in the case of Blueprints, I'm going to have to get a physical notebook and write down everything I notice. When you have that little bit of a warning that this is a puzzling experience and everything is possible until confirmed otherwise. All right, what's on the wall? What color are the walls? How many tables are there? Are there candles? I'm going to count the candles. Whatever little things you can find, some of those things mean absolutely nothing. Some of them actually do connect to some sort of puzzle or some means of solving a bigger idea. When you write down 5 things, discard 4 of them, and one of them pays off hours later, it doesn't matter that you discarded 4 of those other things. You were engaging with the system, and you were proven correct.
Yeah, those arcade-style puzzle games are like what lead to the games that are focused on puzzles. I think of your love of Picross, right? And also Sudoku. Those kinds of games are often just designed to be one thing after another. But the difference between them and the arcade games we were talking about before is there's no real time pressure in a lot of those games. It's just solve the thing, solve it right. You get strikes and can make mistakes or whatever it is. There's a difference between puzzling under pressure and then puzzling just at your leisure. I think I do best with games that let you kind of just take your time and solve the thing. There's no pressure to solve it quickly. You're not going to die if you don't solve it fast enough. And there are plenty of those too. I think of like D&D a lot, and like tabletop D&D, and like you're trapped in a room, spike walls are closing in. How do you get out? And that's a puzzle that is very deeply time pressured. Those varieties of just a very basic arcade style is where then a lot of these other more modern, especially single character puzzle games I'm thinking of, like stuff you've mentioned before, The Witness, Blueprints, Portal, come from. They're spawn out of. I mean, I've been very hesitant to play Blueprints or Outer Wilds. Not because there's anything wrong with those games, but quite the opposite. Because they are so broadly celebrated, I am afraid I'm going to be the one person who hates them. And while we've talked about that before, and I know it's a silly notion, it doesn't stop me from feeling that way. And I will play them eventually. What's really interesting about how puzzle games and good puzzle design has grown over the years is the best testament to a game that's designed well when it comes to puzzles is you don't remember the bad ones. Because every game has a bad puzzle. Not every puzzle is perfectly fit to every person playing. But when the overall experience is remembered positively, I think about Portal. Portal is a 3 or 4 hour game. You can get through it pretty quick. And there are some of those puzzles that are a pain in the ass. Not impossible, not necessarily badly designed, but just difficult in a way that's frustrating. I can't even remember the specifics of those puzzles because instead I remember the other puzzles that were a blast when I'm flinging myself across the room or jumping from platform to platform, launching myself up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is another good indicator of good puzzle design versus frustrating, because if you come away from a game just remembering where it failed, now it could just be your taste too. That's always a possibility, but it could also say something about the way that game was designed. If all you can think about is how stuck you were, then either the game wasn't for you or maybe it was just not designed well or communicated well in the design.
Right, because a lot about puzzles in anything are what is available to you, how easily it is made available to you, and the feedback as you go about. But certainly in video games, because I mentioned before those Symphony of the Night puzzles. There was no big sound that let you know a door opened, so you don't even know if you did anything correct at all. Fortunately, those are not essential puzzles. If they were, I would hate them so very much. There's no sound made, and it's all within the room that you're in, even if you don't necessarily see it happen. So I'll forgive it. There are plenty of games where something that works a lot better nowadays, and Portal is actually a very good example. They give you one tool, the portal gun.
Yeah.
And physics. And everything else is details. There are intended ways to get from point A to point B, and to get to the end of the test chamber, and to do all of that, and to win at Portal, reach the credits. But as long as you get to the end, you're fine. Like whatever wild way you want to launch yourself, and plenty of people over the years have found amazing ways to fuck with the physics engine and launch themselves and do incredible, wild things in Portal. They're still solving the puzzle. Older Legend of Zelda games had lock and key. You find this one item, and that's what's going to get you through this thing. You need these things to do that. As technology evolved, as the games evolved, there was occasionally times where, okay, you need to light a fire. Anything that lights a fire could kind of work here. So maybe there's 2 or 3 possibilities, maybe not. We get all the way to Tears of the Kingdom. If it gets you there, you solve the puzzle. Whatever way you put it through. Do you need to propel yourself? You got tons of ways to propel yourself. Need to make a bridge? Do whatever you want with that. Do you need to just get tall enough? Launch it, whatever it is. They're not redundant solutions. They're not redundant pieces, but they're the ones that you decide to use that get you there. The feedback is reaching where you need to go. It is geographical. You don't necessarily need to hear a little jingle to know you did it. You just have reached it. Again, much like Portal, you just get GLaDOS insulting you while you're in the elevator, or something else after that, versus, well, any kind of other games. I think of Return of the Obra Dinn. When Blueprints was coming out and everyone was comparing it to Return of the Obra Dinn, I knew I had to play it, I knew I was going to love it, and I knew it was going to drive me insane, because that's what Return of the Obra Dinn does. It's a game that doesn't necessarily give you items to pick up to apply this to solve this. You get facts, you get notions, you get little indicators of sound, of visual, of timeline that kind of lead you towards something. While doing a little bit of research to get ready for this episode and remembering some good puzzles and good puzzle games, I found a review of Return of the Obra Dinn that described it as nautical murder Sudoku in Eurogamer's review by Christian Donlin. That's kind of correct. Sudoku gives you a little bit of the numbers and a little bit of their location, and you figure it out from there. And sometimes you kind of just have to make a little bit of a leap. Maybe you're correct, maybe you're not. Fortunately, in a game like Return of Obra Dinn, there's no lives or anything like that. You just kind of go as you go. You have only failed once you've given up, and you do that when you choose to get off the ship. Everything else, take a few leaps. If you get a few things right, it will give you feedback. You need to identify who the person is, what their fate is, and whose fault it is, one way or the other. So if you get 3 entries that are all correct enough, they will go, yes, you've done it. We're going to lock those in. There you go. Don't worry about them anymore. So you sort of filled in your Sudoku box and you can move on to the next one. That is a good use of feedback with a sort of free-form puzzle solving, because if they just let you kind of go and then you just say, I guess that's all good, I'm going to get off the boat without anything, yet again, not enough feedback, not enough confirmation. I don't care how cool the graphic design is. None of us would be talking about this game.
For sure. I mean, I think it reminds me of a game we played and covered on the podcast, Botany Manor.
Very much so.
Those plant designs were, the clues were meant to get you there, but then once you had the correct answer, it told you when you were on the right track, and it locked in, a chime would play, a thing would happen. I found that game very rewarding. There were a few plants that I had to look up the solutions to because I just would get stuck, but I don't think it was the fault of the game. It was the fault of me, as I like to say, being a dum-dum. And the fact that when I meet a puzzle game, sometimes I just can't see the forest for the trees. Wherever someone else's brain would click over and go, oh, that must be the solution, my brain gets hampered or stuck on a very specific thing that might not even be related to the thing I'm trying to solve. I think of, thank goodness you're here, also a lot of puzzles to solve by like talking to the right person, finding the right thing, often comedically attached. Again, it was those aha moments, and games like that really gave them to me. I think one of my favorite games that I can play in an afternoon that is like probably one of my favorite puzzle games because of how goofy and fun it is, but also how it gives me all of those aha moments because there are multiple ways to solve a lot of the puzzles, is Untitled Goose Game. Untitled Goose Game gives you this playpen and just says, do this thing, right? Like it shows a picture of the farmer without their hat or whatever, and like you have to get their hat. Well, how do you do that? Well, you could mess up his crops. You could turn on the water. You could make him step on a rake. I'm just making up stuff at this point. There are all these things, right? But it gives you a list or a goal of things to do, but then lets you figure out however you want to get there. And in some of those puzzles, there's only a few different options. And then in some of the stuff towards the end of the game, you can do a huge variety of things, whatever works better for you and whatever you think is easiest. And so while there may be a more trickier way to solve that puzzle, there are often also a lot of easier ways. And I love those kind of immersive moments in puzzle games because that's really showing good design in a sense that you are giving multiple tracks. It's basically baked in difficulty settings. You don't have a difficulty setting, which some puzzle games do, and I think that's important also, but you have a baked in difficulty setting of like, here's the sandbox, solve it. It goes back to what you were saying with Portal, right? Portal teaches you the basics over the first, whatever it is, 5 or 6 stages.
Yeah, give or take.
And then maybe over every 5 stages after that, they teach you something new, right? They let you play with the things you've learned and then throw something else into the mix. Portal 2 does it even more with the different colored bouncing slimes and, you know, all of that other stuff. And so I think scaling and sandboxes can really be rewarding as long as the design gives you the freedom to kind of do it your own way in like that Tears of the Kingdom or even Echoes of Wisdom way that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A big complaint about Echoes of Wisdom, for better or worse, is that when you would get one thing, like for me it was the water block, once I could stack 5 water blocks, I could get basically anywhere, and I never used anything else, which was, you know, the only difference from me stacking 5 beds before that. Those kind of freedoms in sandboxes makes, for me at least, some of the most satisfying puzzle solving because I don't have to find the one way to do it that exists in a ton of puzzle games. I can find a way to do it. And then when I talk to my friends and say, well, how did you solve that puzzle? They'll go, well, I did A and B. And I went, oh, I did C and D. I didn't know A and B were an option. And I love that. I love when games do that.
Oh, yeah. It is probably a big pain in the ass in terms of writing guides for it.
Yeah.
But there is a certain freedom in however you want to solve it, however you want to go about it. Well, yet again, get yourself there. And it's not about where you pushed a block or in what order you slid across an ice floor or making sure that all of the colored lights are the same color or are in a specific sequence. All of these are perfectly valid puzzles. All of these are perfectly fun. But it's all about context and pieces. And I think if Tears of the Kingdom or Echoes of Wisdom were filled with just that, I think we'd be having a very different conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think talking about these mixing of genres too, like a first person shooter that's really just a puzzle game, in Portal, I think some of the most successful modern puzzle games for me have been things like that. I think of Arranger that I played last year and fell in love with because I love sliding tile puzzles. I used to play them as a kid all the time, especially the physical ones where you would make a picture or whatever. And this is a whole game about that, but it's not just a sliding tile puzzle. Your character is some kind of weird, maligned character because it's how they move through the world. They move the world to move them, and it knocks people over, it screws stuff up. And it's how you engage with all of the game, whether it's bringing a key to a door by sliding tiles, bringing a sword to an enemy to kill the enemy to slide the tiles. It's used in such innovative ways. Puzzle games that do that, where they really dig deep and go, okay, here's a concept. This is the kind of puzzle that existed in A. What if we moved it to B? I mean, you and I have talked about genre mashups a ton, and like some of our favorite rhythm games have been genre mashups in that way.
Oh, very much so.
When puzzle games do it also, it's funny, I never really considered myself someone who loved puzzle games, but looking back on it more recently, seeing the games that just happen to have puzzles in them, but then the games like Arranger, Portal, where in my head, I don't know why I didn't think they were puzzle games, but they are. For me, I like when there's also a narrative or there's also a purpose. I think of Catherine also, a game that I've watched a lot of people play, but I've not played myself. That's a game that is a puzzle game, full stop. It's got a visual novel element as well, but the gameplay is all puzzle solving. For a developer like Atlas, that was not super common for them. They did a lot of RPGs with intense game mechanics, and there were puzzles to be solved in those games too, but not quite like this. And so when companies and games can make a pivot and also merge genres in that way, it can lead to some really cool and successful stuff.
Oh, yeah, and especially because Catherine, that puzzle aspect felt very Atlas in terms of design and in terms of punishment, even, versus a lot of other games that have all kinds of wild, mind-bending things, but it doesn't have that Tetris-like cranking up of time. It doesn't have that intelligent cube like you can't screw up too much or else. But it does have a very core sense of what it is and a very fun kind of gameplay loop. A very fun sort of puzzle design for me were yet again a game that the puzzle is the entirety of the loop. It is Baba Is You.
Yeah.
That's a game that will simultaneously make you feel like a genius and a fool.
Yes.
The, oh my gosh, I can't believe they thought of that. And then, why didn't I think of that more immediately? Something I really enjoy about it is how it encourages you to let go. The notion of, yet again, so much of what gets discussed when we talk about game design is kind of the shorthand. The things that, well, of course, that's how these things work. Platform games go to the right. Walls are solid. Platforms, semi-solid. But when you are changing this equals this, well, that thing that was dangerous is now suddenly fine. It's kind of like playing Adventures of Lolo with mod tools.
Yeah.
But there again, there are times where, oh crap, I moved something and now that's suddenly a problem. But there's very little friction in trying again or undoing a step. So it encourages you to just try it. See what happens. The joy of it isn't just solving the puzzle. It's solving what isn't the puzzle, which not every puzzle game, puzzle challenge has the ability to do, but I very much appreciate that there are games like Baba Is You that do.
Yeah, I think wordplay games or games that take an established formula and mess with it are really vital to this evolution of the game design required for puzzle games. I've not played Void Stranger. I've listened to Dave Jackson's incredible episode on it, and I've also watched Super Eye Patch Wolf's incredible video on it. And like putting the narrative stuff of Void Stranger aside, which I also think is fascinating, the way it takes a block moving, block pushing game and then teaches you very basic mechanics and then withholds mechanics, not because they want to punish you, but because they want you to figure it out for yourself. And some of the things you find later that even allow you to mess with the UI itself, or like how you get to certain stages, how you uncover more of the story, It's what I've heard about Outer Wilds. Like Outer Wilds, if you knew everything about how to play the game, I'm told it would be a 5-minute game. The game is figuring out and solving the puzzles to unlock the ability to do things because it's a time loop game. And the more you learn, the more you can interact with it. And I love that. That kind of game design is really interesting because they're not necessarily withholding information because they want to punish you. They're withholding information because as you discover it, like you said, you'll feel like a genius and a fool at the same time because you're like, oh, that's why I have to do that. Like, I love those kinds of aha moments. We were talking about it earlier with Goose Game. Those kinds of aha moments you can't luck upon. I think there's a lot of design and thought that goes into moments like that. You could have them at different puzzles or different points, but a game that wants you to have those moments, the design is intentional to get you there.
Yeah, it's a lot like Tunic as well.
Yes.
A game that you are slowly solving is how you play the game by finding pages of an instruction manual. Everything that instruction manual tells you, you could do from the beginning. It's not a Metroidvania style where you've now unlocked the ability to do this. You always could. Now you have solved the puzzle and it tells you, which is also a fun bit of game design. And the next time you play, you know what you can do. And you are now applying that knowledge. And yet again, you feel brilliant as you do it.
And it's funny because I've actually been thinking about replaying Tunic because I really loved my time with it. But I do wonder how much of that stuck, right? You know, I'm going to get back into that game and look at it and go, oh, wait, right. I don't know anything. What do I do, right? I always worry about replaying puzzle games because I'm afraid, I'm just going to know everything and then I'll move through. But as someone who replayed Portal 1 a couple of years ago, after not having played it for like 10 years, I was surprised how much of it I forgot and how satisfying it was to rediscover those solves. That's also a really good sign of a not frustrating, well-designed puzzle game is if you can get that aha moment more than once. We could argue that for me, it's because I'm old and I forget a lot of things. That being said, I think those moments are fun also because of that, right? If you solve that moment and you had solved it before, but then you get back to it, and once you figure it out, you go, oh, right, that's how that works. Like a well-designed game can give you those repeatable moments too, which I think is really fun. Like, I don't think you're really going to have those moments playing a Tetris game or a Puyo Pop game or Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but those games aren't designed to be that way. They are designed to be a more immediate, like, presentation and solve. But even those, like as things stack, you could get an aha moment in a way that's not necessarily designed the same way, but it still gives you the same kind of endorphin rush that a larger solve on a deeper mystery could.
Right. It's the designed solve versus the improvisational solve. You think you're sunk, but you get that long piece and you can make a Tetris and suddenly you've started opening everything up. It is its own form of satisfaction, but it is different than remembering where something was in a game or remembering how these pieces work together. What was that passcode? Or if it's randomized every time, how do I find it? That is a very different kind of satisfaction. And part of fun and part of the fun that we find in our games is from those sorts of satisfactions, the overcoming of challenges and getting the feedback from it going, yes, that was hard. Congratulations. One way or the other. I haven't done a replay of Animal Well in about a year or so. I wonder how much of it I will remember.
Right.
I will remember what kinds of challenges there are, but exactly where everything is and how best to apply all of the items and pieces and everything else, that's probably faded a little bit, but I think that will carry with it a new delight.
And to that end, what we were talking about with Tunic and Animal Well and these games where the environments are part of the puzzle, I think about environmental storytelling and puzzle solving and how they go hand in hand. We've mentioned before, and we did a whole episode about Missile Command Delta, but some of my favorite puzzles to solve early on in that game are just posters on a wall and a keypad and like another thing and like trying to pull the pieces together to understand what it's trying to tell me. And that kind of environmental puzzle solving is all over Animal Well and Tunic, where you're just getting hints of things and you kind of have to pull the pieces together. When that's done well, it can be really satisfying. And then when it's done poorly, like maybe it's not as obvious as the developers thought it was, or you just don't see it, it can, I think, be also some of the most frustrating stuff because there's nothing to find per se. It's right there in front of you. You have to see what it means. You have to understand it. I think of some of the puzzles I've seen in Baba Is You, because I've still not played it for myself, where you're literally pulling words out of the puzzle or the screen to solve them. that may seem obvious after a while, but to some other people may just be like, well, why would I ever do that? You can never do that in a game, right? And could seem frustrating. Not necessarily saying it's a bad design, but it's a design that could lead to easy frustration. Like, video games have parameters and rules. And I think some of my favorite puzzle solving is when the game goes, oh, right, remember those established rules that have been in video games since video games began? Yeah, we're going to absolutely fuck with that format. And so you have to think way outside the box to solve our puzzles. I think that can be really fun and satisfying.
I agree. And Baba Is You does a great job of dropping you into that. If you were to start on a middle of the game puzzle, yes, you would absolutely get frustrated. And you would need somebody who'd been playing the game to go, oh, no, it's super easy. All you need to do is indecipherable gibberish. But if you start with it, it changes things slowly, a bit at a time, to let you know that you can change things, and then to slowly open up the definition of what it is that can be changed. Honestly, Matt, you just reminded me of the Impossible quiz from years and years and years ago on Flash games.
Yeah.
A wild puzzle experience and had more than a few pieces of, are you working within the parameters or not? And we're going to keep changing what those parameters are, what the borders are, and what you think you can get away with or what we expect you to get away with. I mean, it's called the Impossible quiz. It's meant to be something that is going to frustrate you. And I remember when someone first showed me it and just sitting there being like, all right, I'm just going to memorize what all the solutions are or piece them out. And the ones that are kind of, well, that's outside of my usual bailiwick. Well, now I know what the solution is. All right, remember what that one is. Cool. Now this one I'm just going to solve. Okay, now this one I'm just going to, and it's 100 questions. And it takes a while. So it's not the sort of thing of like you can just kind of do it blind. But every single one of those, you feel like a genius, you feel like a complete fool, but you also go into it knowing that that's what you're going to be up against. You know, you play a Kaizo game, you play an I Want to Be the Guy masochism platformer. You know that you are playing a game, you are engaging with the design, and you're having a conversation with the game developer that is, make me lose a lot. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to overcome that level of obstruction and feel so much better when I overcome it. Versus unpacking is a puzzle game and a very satisfying one, but it's not one that's trying to hurt you. But it also carries with it its own sense of completion.
It's funny, I think of games like Celeste, which we talked about quite a bit in our last version of this topic, and it's absolutely a platforming game, but you could absolutely argue it's a puzzle game too, because in that game, you have some freedom to take different paths, but there is a solution to those stages, right? There is a progression, and getting your brain working in that way is a fun exercise that you can then carry to other game types. It's why I think games that mix puzzles with other games, like a lot of the games we've mentioned before, have, for me at least, helped expand my love of the puzzle genre. Like, I've never been against playing puzzle games, but I've definitely always been like, well, that's just a puzzle game. Why would I find that interesting? Which is such a narrow way to look at that stuff. And I've since learned that that's definitely not a way to engage it. But also, I've learned over the years that a lot of games I've already played are puzzle games. Like, I might not have considered Braid a puzzle game because it was sort of a timey-wimey platformer. But it is absolutely a puzzle game by its design, how you move through it, the way you solve it. That's what's been the fun thing over the last few years, especially. There have been a lot more language-based puzzle games that have come out over the last few years. It seems obvious, but when you have to solve something, it's a puzzle game. But I think great puzzle games do more than just give you something to solve. They give you a narrative and an experience and something to draw you in. It doesn't mean that games without it are lesser. I think, for me at least, I like when puzzle games have something more beyond just being a puzzle game, in the same way that like a fighting game or a sports game or anything else, if it has more than just do a thing in it, I'm likely to be more invested because I like that kind of interaction.
And this isn't even getting into more narrative games that utilize puzzling aspects to get anywhere. I mean, It Takes Two and Split Fiction are games that you need to solve how to traverse or how to open or how to get in order to get anywhere. And it's one that encourages co-op in order to do that. There's all sorts of games that are utterly about changing perspective. You've got your antechambers and viewfinders. We are getting the resurgence of point-and-click games in games like Golden Idol and its sequel. We can find puzzles in all of our gameplay experiences, especially if we want to change the parameters and stretch the definition of puzzle. But a lot of it is about these obstructions we need to solve and put in order to progress.
I think when it comes down to it, good puzzle design versus bad puzzle design, I think might be a little more nebulous than some of these other topics. I think because it is also dependent on how you see it and how you can solve it. I think with platforming, there is a skill level. And we did say in that episode, there are some things that are obviously very poorly designed, but for the most part, a lot of those harder platforming games, it's also about the skill you bring to it. And I think puzzles are the same way, right? You can play a game that feels very poorly designed and just feel it. But I think for the most part, when it comes to puzzle games, at least the ones that have stumped me, because that's the experience I can speak to, it was more often than not my inability to see what the solution was than that it was made badly. I think that there are puzzle games that meet you halfway better. And then there are others that, like, again, someone might play something like Animal Well and say, this is a bad puzzle game because they don't feel like it's meeting them where they live. But the idea of Animal Well is that's the kind of game it is. You are meant to be confused and bewildered by that game as you solve it. But to someone who doesn't want that and wants their hand held more on that mission and shown the rules and taught what to do, might think it was poorly designed when I wouldn't agree with that, right? Saying something is badly designed is harder to pinpoint when it comes to puzzle games because also I know full stop, I couldn't design a puzzle game. I can't really design puzzles. You know, I'm not a DM. I'm not a D&D person who DMs. I'm only a player. I would trust other people to tell me if something was poorly designed who has done that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Something like a platformer, a fighting game, a racing game, there is a clear and defined goal, and it has to be set from the beginning. Whereas sometimes a puzzle game or a puzzle within a game has a clear defined goal or a clear end state. But some of my favorite puzzles, part of the puzzle is discovering that there is a puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
And then from there, you go deeper and deeper. You're right. It is a lot more nebulous. And if you don't realize that there is a puzzle to solve, well, then you go, well, what kind of gameplay experience is this? If you don't enjoy that kind of thing. Whereas for me, I'm just going to seek and find and root this out, and it's going to provide enrichment and satisfaction for me. Games that are mathematical or word and spelling based, those could be good or bad for different people. Ones that are timing based, music, rhythm based, depends on what you are capable of doing or what you feel like doing. So you're right. This is admittedly a very big piece to tackle, but I also very much enjoy taking a little time to think of some of the puzzle experience that we enjoyed and why we like them.
Yeah. And so, of course, as always, we put it to you guys, do you have a favorite puzzle game? Are there kinds of puzzles you prefer? I am starting to learn that card games are basically puzzle games.
Yep.
Saying this, having put a lot of time recently into Slay the Spire, oh God, I cannot stop.
Welcome.
Yeah.
It never gets better.
No, I did it once on the Game Pass for PC, and then I was like, well, I think this seems like a good portable game, so I bought it on Switch on sale and then never touched it. And then when I got my Switch 2 and was looking for other stuff to mess around with, I went, oh yeah, I have that. I wonder if I'll 5 hours later. With all that said, have you ever been surprised by a puzzle game? Have you ever been surprised by puzzles in a game that you didn't think had puzzles?
What are some of the favorite puzzles that you have found? What are the types of puzzles that get you excited? What has been a puzzle experience that you didn't expect to enjoy, but gave you such satisfaction that it caused you to seek out others? Are you mad at us that we didn't mention Professor Layton once this entire time?
Or Phoenix Wright.
Let us know. Right. I mean, you want to basically play the gameplay equivalent of one of those airport puzzle books in the best possible affectionate way. Go Professor Layton on this kind of thing. If you wanted us to talk more about that, let us know. Get in touch with us. There's so many great ways to reach out. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we are active upon. As of this episode, that is Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. We are funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with on future episodes. You can visit certainpov.com and find not only a bunch of other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, but a permanent invite link to our Discord server where a lot of these discussions continue and where a lot of our topics are generated. And we also talk about the puzzles that we can or cannot overcome as well. I look forward to hearing from everyone else about theirs and sharing some of mine. If you like what we do and want to support us and help us develop our channel and what we're working on, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. If you have the means to, we absolutely would love the support. We appreciate it. But there is also a free tier, so you do not have to pledge any money to be a part of the Patreon and to take part in the polls that we do for our console retrospectives or to get a one-stop shop of all the things that Matt and I are working on. But we do want to shout out those on the high scoreboard. Today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Nyden, Alejandro Alves, Chris Copleen, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, and Sean Bowen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. The letters are some interesting runes. There are more than 26 of them. There will be lights when you hit them. Are they correct? Are they wrong? You'll just have to find out.
Of course, if you want to support us in a way that is free beyond just signing up on the free tier of the Patreon, you can rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. It helps us combat the mighty algorithm. And when folks search for podcasts about puzzle games, we will rise to the top. You can find us on Apple Pods, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Good Pods, basically every platform that exists. We're on. We're even on YouTube. Mostly just a still image with us talking over it. But if that's your preferred way to subscribe, you can find us there too. And subscribing there and commenting on those videos helps us with the algorithm as well. All of those things cost nothing except a little bit of time and helps us grow this audience.
And the algorithm truly is the puzzle game that you can never overcome.
Correct.
But whether leaving a review, whether you're on the Discord, the Patreon, or this is your first episode of Fun and Games, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.